All right, welcome back to another episode of Two Fans, 12 Rings. Jeff here. Brad, what's up, dude?
You know, just another week of stacking wins over here. Just feels pretty good. Steelers get another W. Texas takes care of business. And, the football world is doing great. Won money on FanDuel. Everything seems to be on the up and up.
Yeah, pretty busy weekend. Saturday I was in a wedding, and it was an awesome wedding. I'd say shout out fall weddings, but no shout out to fall weddings. Congratulations, Ryan and Bree, though. Your wedding was awesome. It was a great time. I had the Michigan USC game on my phone periodically throughout the day, as much as I possibly could. Some people probably find this to be maybe off-putting, or maybe like, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but literally the best man was a woman, but the best man speech is going on. The maid of honor speech is going on. I literally have Michigan USC propped up at the table right behind my water cup, and I'm all in at this point. Dinner's going on. I'm watching the game. And just for context of where we're at, basically it's the fourth quarter. Michigan has already fumbled the ball, and USC took the lead. I mean, it's crazy. I think we might even talk about that later on. But that was my Saturday. Michigan getting a huge dub. Sunday, I was able to watch. I don't get to do this often because if New England's on, I'm only watching New England. I'm not flipping channels. I'm watching New England. That's how I've always been. That's how I'll pretty much always be. But they played Thursday, so I was able to kind of sit back and watch Red Zone, which was really nice. Like I don't get to consume a lot of Red Zone. Do you find yourself watching Red Zone, or is it not for you? Because I know you're a multiple TV guy.
Yeah, I would watch Red Zone, but I have every game on.
Like you literally have every single game on.
I have. So like my dad came over, and on the big screen down low, I had 4 games, one of them the Steelers. Whenever Steelers, even when it's like, the Sky Cam comes back in on the stadium and they start talking, big screen, all volume. And when it goes to commercial, I back out and it's the 4 games on the screen. And then the 50-inch TV wall mounted above it is on a 4 screen of the games we have the most interest in outside the Steelers. So I always have 5 games on, and when the Steelers are on commercial, the other 2 games that were hidden behind the Steelers come on. So I consume just about every game. Last week there was 10 games at the 1 o'clock window, so I had to choose 2 that didn't make the cut. But now on Sundays I have 2 or 3 TVs, and I have every game on to a certain extent. Whoever's over, unless it's just me, but whoever's over, we'll pick and choose what gets volume and when the biggie size screens. But yeah, I consume all the games every Sunday.
Yeah. I've always just been like a singular focused kind of guy, but it is nice to kind of just like, let's see what Red Zone's gonna put on my TV next. Owen is very confused by it. Like he'll watch the games with me and stuff, and he's like, why do they keep switching channels? Like, he's like, wait, I want to watch that game. Like he's really funny about stuff like that. Let's talk about your Steelers real quick. So 2-0 versus 2-0. Jim Harbaugh and the West Coast Los Angeles Chargers come over to Pittsburgh. Hostile environment, big Week 3 matchup. Justin Fields starting once again, 3rd week in a row. And Steelers get the dub. Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, the way Steeler Nation feels right now, he's going to be our starter for the next 10 years. We found our guy. We think we found our successor. He plays the way we want to play. Offensive line did a really good job against a Jim Harbaugh defensive line, which was never something you should bat an eye at. Justin Fields, his 1 interception was hit some guy in the hip, bounced way up in the air. Chargers came down with it. Not going to kill him for that. And our defense has allowed, 8.7 or 8.8 points per game over 3 games. So it's Steeler football. It's fun to watch. The terrible towels are waving, and we're 3-0, potentially going on 4-0. In the first 4 games, 3 of them were away games. So it's a great spot for us, especially with the way the rest of the AFC North is really flatlining.
Yeah. I mean, I actually just heard this literally right before I turned this podcast on. I was listening to What's Right with Nick Wright. The Bengals, who are 0-3, are still the betting odds favorite over the Steelers to win the AFC. So not getting a ton of respect right now, but the boys taking care of business. And, I was a little down on you guys after 2 wins. I'm like, well, it's Kirk Cousins' first game. And then I forget who you played week 2, but I wasn't super impressed. I was impressed by this win against the Chargers. I think the Chargers are for real. That'll be reflected in where I have them in the rankings. But, yeah, I thought it was huge. The fact that you kind of beat up on Justin Herbert, held the leading rusher, take that for what it is, but it was the facts. It was the leading rusher through 2 weeks, J.K. Dobbins, held him to check, and T.J. Watt is him.
He's a mutant. He's a mutant.
Him. Yeah. So, yeah, Steelers moved to 3-0, and as of right now, what's the QB situation? What is – you said QB or Steeler Nation wants him to be the QB for next 10 years. What does Brad want?
What Brad would want, ideally, a first-round pick from the Dolphins for Russell Wilson. I mean, if we're saying ideally. I just think that Justin Fields has played so well that, he would have to play awful to take him away from this role, especially when you want to build forward with the team. Russell's a much older quarterback. Justin Fields is young, can be the kind of the face of the future of this offense. I'm not saying get rid of Russ, but I want Justin to go the rest of the way. I want Justin to keep playing. And I know some people are thinking, well, what happens when he starts to have a couple bad games and you guys start dropping games? Do you go to Russ? And it's like, shame on me. I don't think he's going to play bad enough to get benched. So I think Kyle Allen's a serviceable backup. You can get probably a second or third pick realistically from a team that thinks Russell can save their season. Who knows what other quarterbacks could go down in the future? I know Tua's only out for a few weeks when I mentioned that. But who knows what's going to happen? But Justin Fields is playing really well. And I don't know. You think about a guy who can move, who's progressing from the pocket, who's being coached very well with a solid defense, good running game. It's like, I don't know. I'm not asking for the world. I think we got a really good football team right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Patriots last week, I was kind of on my soapbox. They beat the Bengals week 1. They take the Seahawks to overtime. And I was on here basically saying that I thought the Patriots were the only team through 2 weeks that have played 100% their brand of football, and I meant that. Boy, oh boy, did that go right out the window, week 3. Completely outplayed. Offensive line looked like the absolute worst in the league. I would say New England's week 3 performance was worse than anybody else's. I think they were the absolute worst team on the field in week 3. And we looked like the Panthers. And then the Panthers go out. Well, I mean, we won't talk about the Panthers today, but the Panthers go out and obliterate the Raiders to the point of is it just Bryce Young? Is it just simply Bryce Young? And it may be. It may be. They win 8 games before Bryce gets there, and they suck with him there. And now Andy comes in, and he's looking like Tom Brady. But, yeah, I mean, I'm disappointed with what New England is right now. I think the thing that just stinks the most is the Jets are the one team that we always beat up on, and they kind of beat up on us. So that was kind of tough to watch. So I don't have a ton more to add about the Patriots unless you want to jump in and add something about the Patriots or Jets, but that's kind of all I got.
No, it was just shocking that, the O-line disappeared and Stevenson got hurt. And then it just literally felt like there was just no way to come back. It was just a smothering, honestly. And Aaron Rodgers maybe use this game as a springboard moving forward because he does a lot of things that, looks like his season's now started off the Achilles. Him and Kirk both through 3 games look like they're back.
Yeah. Want to hit some power rankings? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
let's do it. Did not come through.
I just seen it kind of like a head movement. So
You're
we didn't
good.
do them week 2, but we talked about so many teams last week, all of the 0-2 teams or 2-0 teams. So literally it was more than half the league. I think it was 17 of 32 teams. I think we decided it was or whatever. But let's go ahead and hit the power rankings. You want to do them simultaneous? You want to trade back and forth? You want to go top to bottom? What do you want?
We could just go 1 to 12. You can go first. Just rattle it off. I'll poke in when I need to.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Number 1, Kansas City. I think it's who you have as well. It looks unorthodox because they are not dominant, but they've won 9 in a row. They're coming off back-to-back Super Bowls. They've been tested in every single game. I think that's what's the best part. They haven't blown anybody out. All 3 games have come down to the wire. But on the flip side, if you're composing a list of the top 10 quarterbacks, usually Lamar and Joe Burrow on there, and Kirk's not, but he's probably top 15. So they've played some good quarterbacks. They've also played some great skill position guys. You got Zay Flowers, you got Jamar Chase, you got Drake London, obviously Bijan Robinson at running back, Derrick Henry at running back. They've been tested, but unfortunately hasn't really resulted in Kansas City dropping a game. They deserve to be number 1. Sorry, I went a little long there, but I just felt like I had to kind of. Number 2 has a case for number 1. And if today, if I'm giving the MVP out, and I know there's another name that's kind of a goofy name that'll get thrown out here in a second, but Josh Allen has been absolutely incredible. What the Bills are doing to teams, just walking around on. If you take out the fact that Arizona was literally leading by 2 touchdowns, they would have blown out Arizona. They blew out the Dolphins. They absolutely embarrassed the Jags last night in a game that would typically get a coach fired. That's how bad that was. Bills at 2. Number 3, and this is where I say this name's a little silly because it's like Sam Darnold, but I got the Vikings at 3. They deserve to be up here. Offensively, great. Defensively, great. This is what I was trying to tell you before the season started when I was like trying to go to bat for the Vikings. Like they're just too talented offensively to suck. And I didn't think they'd be this good defensively. So now I'm like, did I undervalue the Vikings? Like, I didn't think Sam Darnold was going to be the reason this team was going to be good. He's part of it. He's definitely not getting carried by this team. He is part of the success here. Vikings at 3. 4, it's how they're doing it. Running the football, dominant defense, a silly pass rush. The pass rush is one of the best in the league. Steelers at 4. They keep winning. It's probably the highest I've had them on here since we've been doing this pod, potentially. 5, very impressed with this football team. Well coached, shockingly well coached because of it's a rookie quarterback. The offense, we know what we get. We got 3 good receivers. The running game, even without their leading rusher, Seahawks at 5, they've been so good. And I know their opponents aren't like world class, but we'll find out. If they beat the Lions this weekend, watch out. Go ahead.
I just wanted to stop you because we're at the top 5, and we both decided to go the route to have all 3-0 teams. So simply because of optics, I switched the Bills to my number 1 team. Kyler Murray.
And I support it.
Kyler Murray, Tua, and Trevor. Obviously, we could say what we want about analyzing these quarterbacks. Kyler's looked better than we thought. Trevor looks worse. Tua till the injury was Tua. Their last 10 quarters of football have been flawless, and so I put them at 1. We're going to stick with the Chiefs at 2. I just think Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, the way these teams play, they're going to be 1 and 2. I don't have much to add. I also have the Vikings at 3. The Vikings and the Bills are 2 teams I tried to say we're going to have a down year this year, and through 3 weeks, they're both in my top 3. They're unbelievable. And again, the offense, I heard the cries about what the offense could do and what they can be, the coach in the offense, and I was willing to stomach that because I thought their defense was going to be poor. They've been the exact opposite. One of the best defenses in the league. I think they've allowed the third least amount of points in the entire NFL. It's either second or third behind the Steelers. So they've been fantastic. And I went Seahawks 4, Steelers 5, simply because they're both undefeated. They're both playing good defense, but the Seahawks in a traditionally offensive league seem to have more firepower at the moment. And yeah, I can't wait to see the Seahawks play the Lions on Monday night. We got some good matchups. But I just wanted to pop in there because our top fives is the same teams, just a little bit of a switch.
Well, if I continue here, I think there's going to be some real subjectiveness now.
Sure.
Because every one of these teams has a loss now.
Yeah, and is a 1-2 team better than a 2-1 team? But who have they played? How are you gonna? This team's just hurt right now. They'll come back. You know, it's very interesting.
I have the Texans 6, and I know how it looked, but I think the Vikings are pretty good. So I'm leaving the Texans at 6. You're shaking your head. You're disappointed.
So we both loved the Texans before the season. I just think it was like this Colts team seems bad, and they took them down to the wire. They then played the Bears and didn't score in the second half, and it was a 6-point game to the Bears, who looked like they should be 0-3, and then they got boat raced by the Vikings. I'm not out on the Texans. I just think they haven't, like, all 3 games. It's like, where's the Texans we wanted? This is a good team, and they're 2-1. But it just seemed like there's a few teams I think that are playing better than the Texans. They're still in my top 10.
Who do you have at 6?
At 6, I'm sticking with the Eagles. They're a Saquon Barkley drop away from being 3-0. And they are very injured right now. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Lane Johnson, things of that nature. But one play away from 3-1. They beat a good Packers team in Brazil. It was the Falcons, who I think are good, even though their record's 1-2. And then they beat a red-hot Saints team in their building on the road with a lot of questionable decisions. So the Eagles haven't looked as dominant as I wanted them to be. And for that reason, I could have still found a way to squeeze them into the top 5 with the 3-0 teams. But I'll have them as my best team with a loss as of right now.
Who do you have at 7, and then I'll do my 7?
I have the Saints because they were unbelievable and they lost a 1-possession game to the Eagles. But where you said it gets subjective, the 7, 8, 9, 10 stretch that I have, I really floated a lot with where to put those teams. And I landed on the Saints only lost to the Eagles, so I put them up at 7.
So I had the Texans 6, like I said.
Yep.
7 for me, I have the Ravens. And that may be disappointing, but they almost beat Kansas City week 1. They drop a weird one to the Raiders. They probably overlooked them, truthfully. But then they absolutely come out and they smack the shit out of the Cowboys. The Cowboys did make a solid comeback, but really the Ravens controlled every aspect of that game. I loved how the Ravens looked. And then I'll jump to 8 because it makes sense. I have the Eagles at 8. You make a great point. There's Saquon Barkley dropped from being 3-0 and probably in that top 5 discussion. It hasn't looked great at times, but they are just.
You could say Saquon's the reason they have any wins.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
yeah,
it's on 2-6.
Yeah, so I have them at 8. Who do you have at 8?
At 8 is where I have the Detroit Lions. They kind of had a stinker, some untimely turnovers, a weird game against the Bucks where they dropped a game. They got back on track last week. I just still think the Lions are one of the best teams in the NFC.
Go ahead and do 9.
9, because of the coaching. If you go by just fantasy numbers, their defense has a case for best in the league. And they're getting their quarterback back this week. I liked the Packers moving into the top 10. And again, their only loss is less than 4 points to the Philadelphia Eagles neutral site down in Brazil. I think Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, some of these offensive coaches are just They're so dynamic. I put the Packers at 9, bringing 3 NFC North teams into the top 10. And I kind of looked at it as Saints, Lions, Packers. As of right now, I would have all of those teams beating the Texans, who I have at number 10.
So, wait, who do you have at 10?
The Texans.
The Texans. Okay. We are very similar. I was a little high on the Texans, and I have the Ravens in here, and then we're pretty close. So I gave you the Ravens at 7, and then I gave you the Eagles at 8. I have the Packers at 9, Lions at 10. So we're right there. Okay.
It's subjective. We said it right before we started. It's just kind of like, what teams do you like?
I'll go ahead and keep going. I have the Saints at 11, who you've already given.
Yep.
And then to round up my top 12, I have the Chargers. So who are your last two? You already have the Saints.
So at my 11, I did put the Falcons because their 2 losses are to the Steelers and Chiefs, who are in your top 4 and in my top 5.
That's fair.
So it's just like, it's really unfortunate, and I feel like they're playing really well. The Falcons, I believe, play the Saints coming up this weekend. So that's a really good game. And then I tossed and turned. I was like, the Ravens have looked good, but they are 1-2. The 49ers are 1-2, but they let the Rams come all the way back, and it was kind of gross looking. The Jets are 2-1, but Titans and Patriots are their 2 wins. The Chargers are more injured than the Ravens at the moment. But so I'm going to go with John Harbaugh and the Ravens at 12. Because like you said, Chiefs by a toe. Can't have that loss versus the Raiders, though. So I could see why someone could say, let's see what they do at quarterback. You have to put the Chargers here because their 1 loss is on a back-to-back road spot at the Steelers. But those are kind of the teams I tossed and turned with. I landed on I actually wrote down Falcons 49ers, but it's simply because I think the 49ers are so injured right now that how can you really – but you can't lose a game like that to the Rams. So I'm actually going to switch it live to the Chargers.
So you're leaving the Ravens off and you're putting Chargers in.
Yeah, I just talked myself through it. I'm going to land on the Chargers because their lost back-to-back road spot home opener versus Steelers. I'm gonna say that the Chargers.
Okay.
That could change in the next few weeks, though.
Yeah. Let's get into this next little segment here. The Oh My and 3. Okay. Trying to come up with a cute name. Hope you guys like it. So 3 teams here that are just 0-3. We need to either predict what they're gonna do. Whether you think they bounce back, whether you think this is who they are. Go ahead and explain why they shouldn't be this. Maybe they should be 1-2, 2-1, whatever it may be. Let's start with the Titans here. I'll kick it off because you know how I am about the Titans. They're kind of like the team I protect on the long time that we've been potting together. You fire one of my favorite coaches, okay? And you draft Will Levis, which is fine. I'm fine with that or whatever. That makes sense. They go out and they make a lot of key, notable offseason moves. You bring in Calvin Ridley. Last offseason, you brought in DeAndre Hopkins. You go out and get Ladarius Sneed at cornerback. They've drafted tackles in back-to-back drafts. Tony Pollard they acquired this offseason.
Pro Bowler Jeffrey Simmons on the D-line.
They re-signed Jeffrey Simmons. There is no excuse for this team to be horrendous. And to their credit, every game has been decided in the fourth quarter, and I believe they've led all 3 games. So they're competing. But my goodness, this team's had punt blocks 2 of their 3 weeks. They've blown fourth quarter leads.
Will Levis turnovers.
And they're bad turnovers. They're just bad.
Yeah.
I don't think this team's winning 6 or 7 games. I would favor them over. They're going to still win some games they shouldn't. They're just too talented. But I don't know what to think of this team. They deservingly are at 0-3.
Yeah, I think so too. Your quarterback's just giving games away. Your special teams isn't buttoned up. New head coach. It's just it hasn't looked great. And I mean, the fan base is already calling for Quinn Ewers, the Carson Beck, or Shador Sanders. There's who's the next quarterback? Let's just get this season over with. And the thing is you look at the Colts and the Jags, and it's like the division was kind of open. If you could have taken care of one or maybe two of these games, you could be. It would the narrative would be so much different. And I mean, you've already lost 2 home games.
Yeah.
Like it's not a good look. Monday night they're favorites in the sports book at Miami. If Tua was playing, Dolphins would be favored by touchdown. But yeah, I mean, it's just the team is deservedly 0-3. I don't see this team winning more than 7 at this point. If they go 500 the rest of the way, they'll finish 7-10. I think that's their ceiling.
Yeah.
Now they do have 2 games against the Jags, who are also 0-3, and they host the Bengals, who are 0-3. So they've got some winnable games on their schedule, but they got a lot of hard ones too. I don't see this team more than 7-10. This team will be picking the top 8 next year in the draft,
and probably going to get a quarterback.
Yeah, they haven't paid Will Levis. Probably going to get a quarterback. Yeah.
Yeah. The Bengals 0-3. They lose week 1 to New England. They lose week 2 in a close one at Kansas City. And then last night, they kind of just couldn't stop Jaden Daniels. They allowed arguably the greatest rookie game ever by a quarterback.
Oh, it is.
Fun fact, by the way. Last night, 2 LSU Heisman Trophy winners going at it. Okay? Arguably, Jaden Daniels had the greatest rookie game ever. He broke the record for highest completion percentage with minimum 20 attempts. Both teams never punted or turned the ball over. First time in 86 years of pro football.
Yeah,
0 punts, 0 turnovers.
The only thing you could argue is someone might say Evan McPherson missed a field goal. That's a turnover. Maybe.
Yeah, so there was missed field goals, and they went for it on 4th downs and stuff like that, but it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, what is that? Quick math. 71 points of total offense.
Yeah.
It was absolutely absurd.
What's your take on the Bengals?
Yeah, I didn't think they would start 0-3, but Jamar Chase, no contract. T. Higgins hurt playing on the franchise tag. Joe Burrow dyed his hair and he's walking with backless shirts on Broadways. Like, I mean, wasn't a really great offseason. Then you got the wrist issue. The offenses seem to turn it around and they're playing well. But Jesse Bates, Chidobe Awuzie, you lost 2 of your best players in the secondary. Now your secondary's banged up. Both starting D tackles are out. They do not have the depth on defense with them shifting money over to offense. Starting right tackles now gone for the season. This team's going to have shootouts, and they don't have the offensive line to protect a non-mobile quarterback. It's just not shaping up. It's not shaping up to be a great season for the Bengals. And 16, but only one since 2000 or something like that. So it's just not good. I mean, you lose to New England at home right off the bat.
Yeah.
At home too.
For me, I'm going with this team's history here. They're bad in September. Okay? It's what they are. And they come on October, November, and they win a bunch of games. Joe Burrow has had history of winning in this league at a high level and being efficient passing the ball. I thought he was pretty efficient last night, truthfully. And then Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, obviously they just got both those guys back. The defense hasn't looked great. I feel like it can be coached. I like this Bengals team. I think they'll turn it around. I would imagine today I have them sneaking in the wild card. They're going to sneak it.
I don't think so. But here's the one thing that we haven't talked about. Okay, Chargers. What if this Justin Herbert injury lingers all year and they struggle? Jaguars, 0-3, maybe out of contention. Bengals, 0-3, maybe out of contention. The Ravens only have one win in 3 weeks. The Browns only have one win in 3 weeks. It's like you start trying to shape up the playoff picture of some of these teams you had in your mind. Dolphins, Jags, Bengals. I mean, 2 of those 3 are making it. Are they? You know what I mean? Like it's been interesting. So 3 of their next 4 games are on the road. They're at Carolina, who's surging with Andy Dalton now, it seems. They then host the Baltimore Ravens. Then they're at the Giants, then at the Browns. So if you're being optimistic, you can say if they figure out this defense turn around, let's say they lose to the Ravens but win all 3 road games. You're 3-4 trying to, scrape it together by Thanksgiving, but just to play along on their schedule, Eagles, Ravens, Chargers, Steelers, Cowboys, Steelers again, like some of the more difficult games on their schedule. So they got Joey B. They can win any game they play, but that defense is not. I mean, their defense was really poor.
How well can you hear the thunder here?
I don't know if I can hear the thunder. Sometimes there's static. I don't know if it was a fan or not. Can you hear the siren that was playing out here during the thunder and stuff? Yeah, so we should be good.
I think we're under a tornado warning.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
We're just over here potting all of a sudden. A couple more things. Yeah, Jags. Jags 0-3. We just briefly touched on them. I think that this team is cooked. I think they're cooked. I don't think they're good at all. Trevor is average at best.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Trevor's not who we thought that he was. And this defense, for their life, cannot really defend the run. And you look at, some of their losses are close at Miami, 3-point game. Then they host the Browns, lose in a 5-point game. But it's like, how do we look at the Browns right now? You know what I mean? It's so tricky because you don't know every team yet. It's really only been 3 games. But it's like we got a Thursday night game coming up where people were hot on the Cowboys after week 1. Why? Because they beat the Browns. People are like, oh, are the Giants a real team now? Thursday night, can they beat the Cowboys? Because they just beat the Browns. Like Deshaun Watson is digging a grave for the whole 53-man roster over there in Cleveland. The defense looks like they're shot fighters in Cleveland. I know we're supposed to be talking about the Jags, but Cleveland's defense looks like they don't believe in their quarterback at all. So it's like you think about what Cleveland can even do, and there's really not much. If any of you guys are watching along, I'm trying to make sure everything's good. Jeff, his phone just went dark. We're still recording live, pushing through. Yeah, you there?
Hey, you there?
Yeah.
Lost power.
Your phone was connected to the power?